Good morning. What up, YouTube? Good morning. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. And today we got a guest. We got Kevin Kinzinger. He is an independent running for office in California's 48th district. He's running for Congress. So we're going to have him on, Kevin Kinzinger. In fact, here he is. What's up, man? Can you hear me?
Ron?
Yes.
You can hear me clearly, right?
I can hear you just fine, buddy. How are you?
Perfect, dude. Sorry I'm a little late.
No, you're all good, man. Sometimes we just jump in anyway. This is a very live, interactive show. So let me give you the rundown of what you can expect. And I always do this live for everybody. This is Get Your News On with Ron, the world's first viewer-curated streaming news show. What that means is people tweet me topics and send me articles via Reddit, and that's what we talk about. I don't have any of this pre-planned. When we have a guest such as yourself, you're going to take viewer questions. They're going to ask you questions about your platform, about your campaign, about how you feel about different issues. And it's coming at you from two different platforms, from the Live Me streaming app and from YouTube. So whenever you're answering a question, if I look like I'm kind of looking around and stuff, don't think it means I'm not paying attention. I am. I'm just trying to filter in the questions from two different sources, organize them the best I can. I got Pasta helping me out in the chat because I can't look at all the chats at once. So that's what we do here. It's very rapid fire. It's very, a lot of the questions are pretty heavy. So I hope you're ready to talk and get your hands dirty, buddy.
Dude, I'm an open book. This is right up my alley. I'm pretty excited.
Good. Well, so I'll turn it over to you first. Please just kind of introduce yourself. Please kind of tell everybody what you're running for, what your platform is. Give them the nuts and bolts. Give them the 5 minute.
I won't do 5 minutes because I seriously want to jump in and hear from everybody. My name is Kevin Kinzinger. I'm running as an independent for Congress here in California's 48th district. It's a district that is inhabited by Dana Rauerbacher, but I hate spending any time talking about him. The point is he's been there for 30 years. He's been reelected since 1988. So when we see problems here locally, it's very easy to say there's a consistent problem of it not getting addressed. But more than anything, I ran as an independent because this district is pretty independent by nature. It's kind of a purple district, even though the media always covers it as a historically super Republican district. Demographics are shifting. It's about a third in terms of voter registration, NPP, and then a decent split between Republican and Democrat. So we've got an opportunity to sneak in here as a corporate-free candidate, build a platform where we focus on some issues, some things we can actually get done. I work for an investment firm, so I'm kind of an economy wonk when it comes to the way the system is rigged against the middle class, and I'd like to get in there and kick the tires on both sides of the aisle and find some solutions.
So, I mean, you kind of got at a question people wanted to know. A bunch of people wanted to know, why did you choose to run independent? And you pretty much answered it. So you mentioned investment. So let's go there for a little bit. How is everything rigged against the middle class? And what would you do to change that, starting with, of course, your own district?
So first and foremost, I'm a capitalist, right? So I know the independent tag has a lot of baggage with nobody knowing which direction you're coming from, but I know that we can use capitalism as a tool for better or for worse. And what I see is it used for worse a lot, right? Systemically. The most recent example being the $1.5 trillion tax bill, which produces a giant unpaid for windfall that they will then turn around and say the middle class needs to pay for to be fiscally responsible for a balanced budget by cutting entitlements. And that always sticks in my craw because they're really talking about Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, and those are not entitlements. You know, Medicare and Social Security are something that you paid for your entire life. And we've already learned our lesson, if we study history at all, from the Great Depression, why we created Social Security, and the 60s, why we created Medicare. There's just a lot more we could be doing. If we took health insurance in particular off the employer and the individual as a cost, we would drastically improve the economy. But when I look at the landscape today, we hear a lot about the top 1% and the stock market, but the median household income in this country is $60,000. Even here in Southern California, it's $70,000. The median price for a home in California is $710,000. So we can chuckle at millennials not being able to find homes because they've got their avocado toast, right? But that's not the real system. And more than anything, the stock market was never designed to be America's retirement strategy. And that's what I'm seeing more and more and more. Every time you hear privatization, that really just means dumping the liability onto the stock market. And when the stock market crashes, I know the middle class gets crushed, and the institutions, right? The old saying, when there's blood in the streets, they make more money.
So you're not sounding like a capitalist right now. That's a compliment coming from me. But you started saying, I am a capitalist. So can you kind of, I think people have a different definition of what kind of capitalism really is. And I think it kind of like there's a kind of spectrum of it. I would argue what we have is total predatory capitalism. But I think capitalism in nature also has a predatory element. So in a way, they're kind of one and the same.
So here's what I can tell you. I agree with you. Capitalism is an economic tool, right? Not a governmental system. So democracy, or what we have, representative democracy, is the governmental structure that I want. Capitalism is the economic structure that I want. I do believe that the government's job is to provide a basic social safety net, right? A lot of things we all agree on: property rights, military that keeps us safe, not necessarily one that's an imperialist, right? Wasteful spending machine. So to your point, capitalism can be easily misused because it is at its root greedy, right? To find the lowest cost of doing business means paying your workers the least. That's just kind of a fundamental component of the whole thing. So for me, when it comes to the government's role up against capitalism, we always have one of two choices. You can regulate or you can negotiate. I'm a big fan of negotiate. I don't really want big government regulating every sector of business because they don't always know how, and it's usually relatively inefficient. What I'd like to see is the employees get to unionize and have that system fostered so that they can fight for safety on the job, for good wages, for healthcare, in a way that's mutually beneficial for them and the company, which is what we used to do. I'm not here to reinvent the wheel. I'm just here to take us back to some systems that actually helped level the playing field.
Yeah, you know, the best analogy of capitalism I ever heard actually came from Henry Rollins, if you know who Henry Rollins is.
Very much so.
And, well, he said, he's like, look, I'm not completely against the total idea of capitalism. I just think that if capitalism was a person, it needs to be tied to a chair to the point where it can just move its little finger a little bit. Like it can move its finger a little bit, and there's a little air hole so it can breathe just enough. If it's regulated that much, capitalism is okay. And I actually think he nailed it. I think that, you know, the idea that you can have a market where people can participate in, people can, you know, put their stuff out there and try to make an honest living, that's fine. There just needs to be, like you said, strong unions, strong workers' rights, strong social protections within a society. Because, by the way, if you don't have a social safety net, democracy can't work. So, you know, whenever you hear people on the right railing against any type of social safety, it's like, well, clearly you hate democracy then, which they do. But that's what I always bring it back to. Like, well, you're anti-democracy then, because you can't have one without the other. You just can't.
Well, and they're the same people that want to spend on militarized police and military. And it's not that they don't like spending. Like they're fibbing, right? Every time they talk about hating spending, they love spending. They just love spending on different things. Both sides love spending. But you look at a state like California that now has a budget surplus because, in my opinion, yes, the economy, but also Prop 30, where we voted to increase taxes on ourselves. I travel the country for my job. I hear every part of the country referring to California as the land of fruits and nuts and California, right? But we're the ones actually paying our bills and balancing our budgets. So yeah, I'm just really tired of the partisanship in the back. I'd rather see some things get fixed for the middle class.
So Jordan wants to know, do you think a capitalist system is sustainable as more jobs disappear due to technology? Which is a valid point. I mean, we're slowly moving towards an economy that's going to have significantly less jobs.
So we already did, right? Look at the way that the economy was structured after the Industrial Revolution. We switched to a predominantly service industry. I think capitalism has the ability to pivot faster than anything else. I think capitalism has the ability to create ingenuity and solve for problems. We have real problems with technology like automation, right? We can talk about bringing manufacturing jobs back, which I think we should, and I think we can, through unions and local pressure to buy here, make here, et cetera. but that's also going to be far and away less of a problem than automation, right? Everything that we're reading about, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of independent contractors, truckers, the more cars and everything drives themselves, we're going to have a lot of people out of the labor force. Now, that's one of the big things that I'm worried about from the context of retirees. So you look at our economy right now, you look at our labor makeup, we have 10,000 people a day in this country turning 65 years old. Now, they should be falling out of the labor force, but even if they do, how much more of a burden are we going to have on, again, Social Security and Medicare? Back real quick to capitalism. I love the Henry Rollins metaphor, but I thought of one while we were talking. I think capitalism is like my friend that drinks with us, but has a habit of getting too drunk and 86 from the bar. And we just need to like keep it
every single time, by the way. It's not a one-time thing for your friend. Every single time your friend does that. And then you're like, come on, he's still a good guy. And I'm the guy that's like, no, we got to ditch this dude. But deep down, I'm like, but he does occasionally buys a round. I don't know. Yeah.
He sobers up and helps Doctors Without Borders or something. Yeah.
I still say we got to ditch that dude. He's not a good hang anymore. He's just not a good hang. So the second part of Jordan's question is, do you support a basic income for all Americans, a UBI?
No, not right now. Nothing that I've seen. I mean, look, I'm the one arguing for a single payer system as a path to Medicare for all. We can talk about increasing minimum wage. There are a lot of social safety nets I am more than happy to figure out a way to pay for. And I actually spend most of my time yelling at both sides to stop saying you can't pay for it, right? With healthcare in particular, it's a lie that you can't pay for it. Something like this would be a very big bureaucratic machine. And I always want to approach what I'm doing from a context of what we could actually get done in today's climate. I'm not going to sit here in an idealism vacuum and pontificate about the perfect world that we'd like to see. I'm a little bit more stoic about it. I'd like to see some actual stuff we can get towards. I don't think politically you could even begin to move that ball uphill of a basic income. And then the question again becomes where you pay for it. And I'd like to increase taxes to US norms, right? Tax the rich the way we used to pay for a lot of things. But let's get those things paid for before we start deciding on a basic income. I mean, I'd like to see a $4 trillion infrastructure package. Let's put everybody back to work here in the States. You can't outsource those jobs, right? We desperately need our dilapidated infrastructure across the board to be updated. So I want to spend money that way, but that kind of money reinvigorates the economy, whereas a basic income would, but it's harder to pay for.
Well, I mean, I think we could certainly afford it. It's just a matter of we have so many other hurdles first. Like if someone asked me, what's more important, Medicare for all, single payer healthcare, or UBI, I'd be like, let's focus on getting single payer now. Let's focus on that first. So I see where you're coming from there. I do think we're going to get to the point where a UBI will be inevitable. Pretty much for the survival of our country as we know it. Now, when we're going to get to that point, it's really tough to say. I mean, we can't really predict how fast technology is going to go, but I do think that day is going to come. But I'm with you that we should be focusing on infrastructure and healthcare for all. That should come first because that's something that we needed to fix yesterday.
Yeah. So let me ask you, who has a successful UBI? Because all the ones that I think of off the top of my head, Saudi Arabia, Alaska, Indian reservations, they're all cash flush from a single commodity, whether it's gambling or oil. Do any of the Norwegian countries have UBI, or who has it?
Off the top of my head, I can't. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't say it. I don't think it's something that's going to happen tomorrow, but I do think it's going to be something that will eventually be something common, not only in our country, but in other similar countries in the world. And I'm sure some folks at the chat, some stuff is coming to their heads. But yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things. It's not going to happen tomorrow. I do think we're going to get to that point in time. But as far as when that's going to be, I don't know. And who knows, maybe technology is going to fool me the other way. Maybe we're not going to have self-driving cars as soon as I think we're going to. And a couple of people in the chat are pointing out that Australia does some form of a UBI.
Cool.
Yeah. So Norway, some other folks in the chat are pointing out. Let's see. we got a lot of questions coming in for you. Some people are making fun of Nancy Pelosi. Big Baby Zubas, thank you very much for the super chat contribution and the compliment. I appreciate that very, very much. So Gloomy Goblin wants to know, and this is another down the road question. Do you think a resource-based economy will be the next step?
A resource-based economy.
Mm-hmm.
What in terms of which resources? Natural resources?
Well, I think they're saying that, you know, when eventually the monetary system will become obsolete, do you think a resource-based economy would be next? This is, again, is a time down the road question. The way I would answer that question, I think that, and they specified here all resources, I think we're going to go more barter next. I think that's going to be something that, because that's already happening. There's like a thing in Bellingham, Washington, where they do, it's called like Green Corner or something like that, where they have like a really well-organized barter system. You see actual libertarians who I don't agree with often, but, you know, some things we do see eye to eye on. And that's one thing that they do a lot. They have organized like bartering systems going on. So my answer to that question would be, I think bartering is going to eventually be a thing. But what are your thoughts? Do you think it'll be a resource-based economy?
No, only because, again, when you study civilized history or the history of civilizations, we almost always seem to arrive back at currency, right? I don't think that...
Well, what I'm saying is I want you to invest in my basil farm. I have a really good basil farm, and this is a big opportunity for you, Kevin. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Please go on with your answer.
Everybody at home, if you're making pesto, you have to blanch your basil first. It keeps it green. It's very good. All right. I love it. But again, I think the internet allows people to do this. I think you're seeing the millennial generation in particular return to artisan crafts, to farming, to urban gardens, and a lot of different things that we can do this. We can barter in a more conventional manner. People ask me all the time about Bitcoin because I'm in the finance world. And look, I understand the altruistic idea behind it and freeing yourself from the machine and whatever else, but it is so ripe for black market activity and everything else as well, which is why North Korea and everybody else has been so involved in it. So currencies are always one of those tricky situations. I mean, the founding fathers had to deal with it because originally every colony had its own currency. I think we can barter. I don't think we have to replace the entire system, nor do I think we're going to.
Well, yeah, I mean, we already are. You're absolutely right. I mean, and again, it's kind of like a more like big picture philosophical question, and there's some more nitty gritty policy questions too. Don't worry, but I just think that's. I mean, it's hard to think about because we used to just have a gift based economy. Like there were many times in human history where we would just kind of share. You know, we also killed each other all the time. I mean, it's not like that was a perfect society. But I'm just saying it's hard to think about because as long as we've been alive, obviously we've lived in a monetary system, but that's just a blip in human history. And, you know, it's sometimes when you think about that, that's hard to wrap your head around.
I mean, even the Fertile Crescent, first civilizations developed currency, didn't they? I mean, I think the Incans were all barter-based. I mean, that was a pretty massive empire to not have a currency, but most civilizations create a currency. It's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah, most civilizations that we know and that like in the recent couple thousand years, yeah. But I mean, just when you look at like the history of this planet, it's pretty crazy. Unless you think the Earth is 6,000 years old, in which case, you know, that's a whole other can of worms.
Is it older?
I don't know. We'll have to... What's your stance on DACA?
No, those kids were promised that if they made themselves known, we would look after them. They enrolled in school, they got jobs, they went to the military, they're statistically less violent and more educated. They are model citizens. They did their part. We made them a promise. To sell them out now and to have this attitude of let's send them home, this is home. They don't know any other home. And it is the most un-American thing imaginable. I am so sick of people talking about their parents had to go through the proper or grandparents or whoever had to go through the proper channels when that was Ellis Island, where if you weren't visibly sick, you were let through. I've been to Ellis Island. I've been on the tour. They'd flip over your eyelid, cough here, move on, right? I mean, it was laughable. So no, I would absolutely protect the DACA kids.
Do you support Nestle and others privatizing water in California and everywhere else?
No, but again, that's a bad negotiation tactic by the state. The states run into these revenue situations where they think that they can get more revenue from a big business than they can from local people. So they cut all kinds of corners and give them all kinds of grants, right? You see it all the time with states trying to recruit headquarters. And then they quietly give them $97 million over a course of a couple year period in tax breaks, right? So that's just really, really bad deals. What's happening in Michigan is incredibly offensive when you have a water crisis going on locally and then you have a big business paying $200 for all the water they can carry.
Yeah, I mean, but that's again, when you have two parties that are bought and sold by the same owners, and I know you're trying to be outside of this, but when you have that kind of system, and you also have, again, I mean, you want to talk about a lack of protections, and I'm careful to use the word regulation. I prefer to use the word protection because that's really what these are. When you talk about a lack of protection, what we do to the environment is absolutely insane. I mean, it's absolutely insane. We do not do the proper homework when it comes to pretty much anything. If there is a buck to be made for the oil and gas industry, and when you hear people in the science community, I mean, they're laughing about it to stay sane. They're like, this is even conservative leaning scientists are saying, yeah, this is nuts. We should not be fracking. We should not be doing any of this. But again, when you have the capitalism that we have, when you have the political structure that we have, this kind of stuff, I mean, it seems like it's going to continue to happen without significant oversight and changes in the way we do things.
Totally agree. Again, we were here in the 20s. We had to respond similarly in the 60s. We're just dumb monkeys. We make the same mistakes all the time. So we've gotten concentrated into an oligarchy, right? Where there's a handful of a cartel of companies in the country that control way too much. And to your point, buy and sell politicians on both sides. So we're here to fight that whole thing, that whole mechanism, by telling people you don't have to have over $1 million to make it to Congress in the age of the internet. I'm not going to send people every door direct mail. I'm not going to run television ads that no one's going to see. So we're trying to make some systemic changes. But I think that we have to retool the way we talk to people that don't believe in climate science, because I'm the guy whose conservative friends muted him on Facebook years ago because I was just shouting at people. Well,
did you tell them that you think the Earth is 6,000 years old? They would have liked you again.
That doesn't work. I mean, I've tried everything. So again, being in the investment world, finance world, 100% Republican almost, right? So I've been a closeted liberal for years by day, and then by night, feverishly on the old keyboard there. But my point is, you can't shame people into submission on any issue. And that's what I've seen us do on the left when it comes to climate science, is we just feel like we have the high horse here. So I can beat you over the head with statistics and tell you how stupid we are and remind you that Syria is in the Paris Agreement, right? Everyone is but us, but it doesn't get through to them. So we've got to start talking about it in ways that circumnavigate all the cognitive dissonance that they're dealing with, or else we're never going to find solutions. I mean, we're not going to be able to say that guy sucks more than me, vote for me, which is all anybody's doing. So when it comes to climate science, we have at my firm a renewable energy fund where we buy solar and wind farms and sell the electricity to utility companies. It's happening all over the country, and these utility companies are buying renewable power because of capitalism, because the price has now gotten competitive. So there's a whole different way we can approach the argument where, again, here in California, we employ so many people in the renewable sector and we have such a healthy economy that you can easily point to us and just say, the idea that renewables kill the economy is stupid. The idea that fuel emission standards kill the economy is stupid. Now, you can look at our state and say, that doesn't make sense economically, right? Because I told them all about the ice core samples and they don't care.
Well, it's one of those things. I think part of that is the fault of the media. I mean, the reason climate science is so frustrating is because the evidence is all there. Whenever people say, oh, I don't believe in climate change, well, guess what? That's not something you get to believe in or not believe in. That's something that's there. That's evidence-based research. That is an evolving hypothesis. You get to believe or not believe in a supreme being. That's something that you can either choose to believe in or not believe in. You get to believe, you know, something that can't be proven. You don't get to believe. You're either a denier. You're a climate change denier. So that's why it can be so frustrating. But that's because you have a media that presents it in such a neutral way. Why? Because they're funded by oil and gas companies. So they bring on Ken Ham as if he has something relevant to add to the conversation. And I think that's the problem there. I don't think it's just the left shaming people that are denying climate change.
So I agree with you from a macro perspective. The media, for two things that are wrong with the media. It's profit driven, so it's clickbait, right? So it's going to be sensational. It's always going to be sensational. We have to stop yelling at the media that's driven on profit for being a media driven on profit. It's going to give you Kardashians. It's going to give you Trump. It's going to give you things that excite in one direction or the other. But the longer that we all stay embroiled in that, the longer nothing gets done. So you've got to have a conservative family member that you know that still doesn't believe in climate science. You know that telling them stat after stat after stat after stat doesn't change their mind. I'm just asking you and anybody else, how do we get through to those people? Because the only way I've found is through economic argument, through the idea that clean air and clean water is not partisan, like you said earlier with water. I mean, look, Nixon signed the EPA and a lot of the Clean Air and Water Acts, but even stuff like that doesn't get through to people.
Oh, I'm with you there. I mean, I think that the biggest fault of, the Democratic Party, for one, and just our politics in general, is that nobody, at least nobody with power, is highlighting a Green New Deal. I mean, you can even look at the 2016 presidential just as an easy, for instance. You know, I mean, it's not always the greatest example, but it's an easy one. You know, Donald Trump made all these bogus promises for jobs in the heartland where people were desperate for jobs, and he won a lot of states that have been blue most of the time. Hillary Clinton didn't promise anything new. Instead of running on a Green New Deal, which she could have done, but she didn't want to do because she goes around the world promoting fracking. But if she would have done that, ran on a Green New Deal, she would have won all those states, hands down. I believe that. So, I mean, that's something that is a missed opportunity. So I think you're absolutely right. You have to take it from an economic perspective. Don't beat them over the head with, well, it's absolutely ridiculous you don't acknowledge this. I think you can point it out that it's like, look, pretty much there's consensus in the science community. And these people aren't, you know, crazy lefties trying to fool you. These are scientists. That's what they do. A lot of the scientists I know are actually more conservative leaning politically. But that's one area where they're very much, quote unquote, to the left, but it shouldn't be left or right. It should be like, hey, this is the frickin' planet. We are by definition a virus on it. That is definitionally what we are. We are a walking virus. Don't get uncomfortable. Definitionally, that's what we are. We deplete the resources and then we move on. What?
I was just clarifying parasite.
Oh, parasite. All right, I'll take it. I
live on a host and feed off of its resources with no care for its well-being.
And then we move on.
Well, we think we will.
We hope we will.
Look, here's another thing that I get frustrated with. We joke about the people that think the planet's 6,000 years old. These are the same people that don't want to support us with climate change, right? Why can't we talk to them about the Garden of Eden and our duty to preserve the planet that was given to us, right? I mean, we've got to find, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm just saying we've got to find new ways to talk to these people.
So what you could do is you could try to tell these people that the reason we don't have talking snakes is actually because of climate change. They used to be around all the time, and then climate change wiped them out, you know, a couple thousand years ago. And now they can't talk anymore because they're, you know, the climate changing really fucked up their vocal cords. We could try that.
And the whale that Jonah lived in and the burning bushes, all these things went extinct because of climate change.
Increased precipitation really screwed up the burning bushes. The burning bushes were doing fine. They were just burning like a midnight oil song. And then they just like
I hope you know all I'm picturing in my head right now is Mel Gibson's like History of the World.
Which gives us all something to look forward to. We have a lot of freaking questions for you. Let's see here. Balthazar, thank you very much for the super chat contribution. Redneck Anomics, thank you very much for the super chat contribution. Balthazar wants to know, if you have a Vitamix, you don't need to blanch. It has enough power to blanch while processing at higher speeds. So take that home with you. And the question here, thoughts on municipal mobile data?
Municipal mobile data in terms of the cities offering data packages?
Yeah, I think what he's getting at is just the ability to have mobile data within your community, kind of like municipal internet, except it's applicable to mobile data.
So again, the liberal in me is for limited government, and so I'm hearing another bureaucratic entity that is now, you know, getting in the mix. I think what we're really getting at is net neutrality, which we all need to defend fearlessly, because that's the free flow of information, news like yours, that would get absolutely censored by big business paying to have Netflix dominate the airwaves or the broadband waves. I mean, Netflix is now 40% of internet traffic on a Friday night in this country. So, I mean, yes, that's a lot of Netflix and chill, but that's the kind of flow that the big corporations need, want, and have, that if we started letting people pay to play, we'd go down a very, very slippery slope. So we need net neutrality. A lot of low-income communities still operate on the fiber grid, and a lot of big business wants to get rid of the fiber grid because it's not as profitable, or excuse me, the copper grid, because it's not as profitable as the fiber grid. But our first responders still use the copper grid as a backup. So there's a lot of components in here where we need to safeguard. I mean, again, this is infrastructure we need to have an eye on and update, because digital warfare is going to continue to be a thing. Again, at my investment firm, we have a real estate investment trust, a REIT, that buys data centers and surgery centers. So the internet is something in terms of the infrastructure that I'm very familiar with and that I'm very concerned with. I don't know if everybody out there knows, but Russia has been parking their submarines next to the transatlantic and Pacific internet cables for a long time. We don't know why. Hopefully they do. But the NSA's got that gigafactory in Utah after the Patriot Act. So there's a lot of components to internet that I'd like to dive into. Municipal data, I mean, that's a local government thing, to be honest, but I don't know too many cities that have the budget to start throwing up data packages.
Well, here's the thing, and when it comes to net neutrality, I completely agree with you. We talk about net neutrality a lot on this show. I think it is absolutely paramount to a democratic society, and the fact that we lost it is extremely dangerous, and they've been trying to take it for a long time now, and they got it. But my permanent solution, the only true permanent fix I see, is municipal internet nationwide. I mean, other countries that have done something similar, they enjoy faster internet at a more reasonable price than we pay. Typically, I mean, over in the UK, they pay about, you know, £20 a month on average, sometimes a little more than that. Countries that have done things similar to us don't do very well. Australia duplicated our model, gave the ISPs away to private corporations. They have shitty internet at a high price, much like we do, actually, comparatively speaking. The only permanent fix is municipal internet, because when you put the internet in the hands of the people, well, we're going to follow net neutrality laws.
I'm with you. It's just, I know, again, a data center, a tier 1 or tier 2 data center worth any of its salt starts at $20 million. I mean, we buy data centers that are $166, $200 million. The servers inside will be, in terms of total cost to run the place, 12 times that, right? That's just for the building. The tenants inside are swapping out the servers every 18 to 36 months. That's just Moore's law, right? Bigger, faster, stronger. So all I'm thinking is, if you put all of this in the hand of a city, and the city has to run this data center, and the city has to provide everything, they're either gonna have to contract it out, or they're gonna have to run it themselves. And these are mission critical buildings. When a data center goes down, bad things happen. So there's all kinds of examples, but one of the most common ones that keeps happening that you don't hear about is internet or airline companies. You'll read about a Delta outage where they had to ground 4,900 flights, but you don't ever hear the fact that it was their data center that crapped out and they lost control of the entire company. And when they have to ground 4,900 flights, the FAA has to juggle everybody else, and we all, as consumers, get stuck, right? So I don't want the government running more and more data centers, is kind of what I'm concerned with. I ironically trust corporations with my data more than the government. I mean, everything that Facebook has on me, I gave them. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not with you there. And Balthazar points out it's about properly providing municipal coverage to all residents as a right. 911 fails 1 in 5 times to find people. Mobile comm companies provide insufficient coverage and data speeds for exorbitant prices. Well, then what is your fix? Like as far as just net neutrality and all this goes, if you don't favor, municipal broadband, what would be your ideal fix for this? We both agree that it's a big problem. What's your solution?
So to be fair, municipal broadband, this is the first time I've dove into it, so that's my fault. So I'll research.
That's cool.
But I'm just the wheels turning and telling you what I'm thinking. In terms of the net neutrality component, we just need to classify the internet as a utility the way we did with everything else. It needs to be a fair price for everybody to have the same amount of access to it, the same way that water and electricity are.
See, so here's the thing, man. I'm with you, and when it was a Title II, that was great, and I'm all about making it a Title II again. I think it should be designated that by the FCC, but they're just going to keep coming after it. We're just going to keep having this fight every couple years. You know what I mean? Like that's just how it's going to happen, because we had it as a Title II. The new FCC overturned it. So the next time we have a severely right-wing FCC, which we either have a moderate right-wing FCC or a totally right-wing FCC, they're just gonna do it again. They're just gonna overturn it again. So I mean, to me, it's like you need a permanent fix and policy. Even though I'm for it, I'm for the net neutrality bill in California. I know it's flawed, but we need to throw everything we can at this fight. I'm for any other net neutrality bill I see, because we need to throw everything we can at this fight. But I mean, I'm also about a permanent solution, fixing this once and for all.
I agree with you. I think your cynicism is warranted, right? That this will be an ongoing fight that we'll have to keep doing. But at the same time, that didn't happen with the other utilities, right? We kind of, for more or less, won that fight as a country. I think a lot of it does come down to public pressure. If we all collectively demand to have an open internet, I like to think that in a representative democracy we can still get there. And believe me, I'm the same one saying we're in a cartel oligarchy, but I still have some faith.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the proof's against you. 83% of people wanted net neutrality, and they overturned it anyway. People were screaming on the FCC's website, and what did the FCC do? And what did Ajit Pai and his ilk do instead? They made fake comments up. That's what they did, and then they pushed it through anyway. Public opinion, and there's a Harvard study done on it, public opinion plays no role in dictating policy. In fact, in many ways, it does the opposite. So, we have to take the infrastructure back. That's the only permanent thing. Balthazar points out 97% of scientists won't agree on which toothpaste to use. I thought talking snakes were cleared out by St. Patrick. Mel Brooks's History of the World. Also, people want to know how you feel about Russiagate.
That's something that I've been following since the Orange Revolution in Kiev. That's where we originally found out about Paul Manafort's $12 million. Again, coming from the finance community, I know how the Trump family was cut off from U.S. Capitol in the late 90s, early 2000s after all their bankruptcies. When they needed money, they went elsewhere, right? So I think there's a lot of meat on those bones. I don't think any of us are served by screaming about it right now. I hardly ever post about it. Let's let Bob Mueller finish the investigation and see what comes out of it. My biggest fear is if we don't end up with a smoking gun on collusion, the public is going to get lost in a couple decades long money laundering, web. But I think that this will shine a light on both oligarchies in a way that needs to happen.
I'm with you on that last part. I mean, but this is one of those things where they're just pointing fingers at a scapegoat. And I despise Trump as much as the next person. I think Trump is terrible. But I think all we're going to find here is money laundering or something similar, something that a shady oligarch like Trump does, something like a shady oligarch like the Clintons do, something like shady oligarchs do in Russia, in England, in Italy, wherever. I think oligarchs, they know no country, they know no allegiance. It's just shady business dealings as usual. And I think the distractathon this has become, and the reason I'm way more cynical about Russiagate is because I've really experienced the cyclical effect of it. I've experienced the effect of independent media being attacked, of people being smeared on a daily basis, of the intelligence agencies overseeing social media more than they ever have before. This is all connected to the hysteria that is Russiagate. And who's actually benefiting from Russiagate? The 1%, big corporate media, because their ratings are being experienced, because there's people that are privileged enough that this is the only issue that they think is important right now. And I just see it as a scapegoat because people are really awake to what the system's really doing right now. And as you even hinted yourself, we gain nothing by talking about it constantly right now. We gain absolutely nothing. I used to be, oh, let them finish the investigation. I'm to the point now, it's been almost 2 years. They got pretty much nothing. I mean, I don't know. The Rainbow Bernie ab meme didn't sway me. Maybe it swayed you. It didn't sway me at all. How much time do they need? And this is such a gross waste of resources and money and time where we could be talking about way more important things. I'm completely over it. At this point, I don't think we're ever going to find anything out. And I think with this ridiculous DNC lawsuit, which proves how tragically out of touch the Democrats really are. I mean, when you think they can't possibly get more out of touch, they say, hold my beer. I think they're just going to try to prolong this indefinitely. And I think we're going to get lukewarm results in 2018 and possibly 2020, depending on how much they steal because of it.
I agree with you on that last note completely. And again, the reason that we're running an independent campaign is so that we don't have to engage in partisan politics on either side, and we can focus on discussing issues, because all anybody's doing around Russia is making it a partisan pissing contest, which is the root of the problem and the problem all interwoven. I'm curious why you've lost faith in the investigation entirely, because look, even if it is everything that you're saying, let's drag that into the light, right? If you and I are hip to the oligarchy and the general public isn't, then let's drag into the light exactly the way these backroom deals go down, exactly the way these guys meet off the Seychelles to do big business deals at everyone else's expense, right? Like, I don't understand how we really have a revolution in this country and bring democracy back to the people unless we drag this stuff into the light and find out what happens. There were 9 investigations in Benghazi. So, I mean, talking about wasteful resources, like, I mean, this one to me, like I said, has way more meat on the bones. You're already seeing indictments and charges against people that, if they were as connected as everybody says they are into the deep state, wouldn't be getting in trouble, right? If the deep state existed, Trump wouldn't have gotten elected. The Trump team became the very deep state they were warning about. Not that there aren't already concerted influences and everything else, but when you say they, a lot of times my first response is, who is they? Because if you really start to narrow down who they is, they, in these macro conversations, becomes a very, very complex web of people. And I have zero faith in humans' ability to keep a secret. So when it comes to conspiracies, I'm very often skeptical throughout, because it involves a lot of people keeping a lot of secrets, which nobody's very good at. The Mueller team is tight-lipped. They've done RICO cases on organized crime families before. It does take a year or two to comb through everybody's books. These guys have been running this crap through shell companies for decades. It takes a long time. But his team is tight-lipped. Everything we know about the investigation is only coming from people on Trump's side that get interviewed after the fact and tell them, reporters, what Mueller asked. So we don't know what he's got yet.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head on why I'm cynical about it, because I mean, first of all, at this point, and I know people say it takes time, they compare it to Watergate. It's been a while, and they've thrown a lot of just borderline nothing burgers at us. And why I'm so cynical, and you said you're skeptical of people's ability to keep a secret. So am I. Donald Trump is about as subtle as a horse taking a shit in the middle of Manhattan. And you want to tell me that he's somehow staying ahead of all these intelligence agencies?
No, he didn't.
I find it hard to believe. I mean, I don't, I find it very, 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 very hard to believe. And if they find something tomorrow, I mean, I'll change. I'll be like, all right, they found something. But until then, I don't want to hear about it on the media 95% of the time. I think they're using it as a scapegoat. They're using it as a distractathon. This lawsuit is a bogus waste of resources. And those are the cyclical effects of all this. So I'm tired of giving it lip service and giving it some kind of credibility when it's really not deserving of any at this point. And the cyclical effects, the damages aren't even worth it. People are just, even if they expose some kind of oligarchy, people are still going to spin this. And when I say people, I mean the corporate media. They're still going to spin this to make it something unique to Trump. People like you and I know it's not something unique to Trump, but they're going to spin it that way. And that's going to be the end of it. So, I mean, I don't share your optimism that this will lead to some kind of real positive thing.
He's the poster child. So he's the poster child of everything we've been frustrated with for the last 30 and 40 years. So I have hope that we are in a pendulum situation where we have swung so far into crazy land with what they've been doing that once everybody sees it, we'll get to come back to normalcy where we will stop this infanticide fascination with rich men thinking that they know everything. I mean, Donald Trump controlled the narrative that he started his whole empire on $1 million loan. No, he inherited a $40 million REIT of Manhattan property in the 70s from Frank. Then he inherited another $20 million when Frank died, at least. Like he had everything handed to him at the right point and the right time to make a lot of money a lot of different ways and lost a lot of money a lot of different ways. But he still went through the primary process and into the election with this reputation as a good businessman. That's a failure of everybody running against him. But the idea that the media has a cohorted, concerted effort to control a narrative, again, that's where we differentiate a little bit, because I just come back to the profit. It's a lot more simple. It's not that CNN is coordinating with MSNBC and Fox and everybody else to do anything that keeps us all mystified as sheep. It's just that they think this is what sells and this is what they get the most clicks on. So this is what they keep force feeding us. It's just a vicious cycle of clickbait.
They also have an incentive to uphold the status quo. I'm not implying that they all meet together and they bring up these journalistic conspiracies. Right. What I am implying, and what is just factually true, again, they're motivated by profit, as you said, and they're also motivated by a status quo that is helping their business model. That status quo narrative right now is that, hey, everything was fine until Trump got here. So they're going to try to make it out like Trump is some outlier. Meanwhile, he's just an oligarch as usual. He's despicable. Yeah, he's absolutely despicable. You know who else was despicable? The Bush administration. I mean, this is a status quo that is broken beyond repair. Donald Trump is the ugly face. Donald Trump is a Republican minus subtlety. That's all Donald Trump is. He is a Republican minus subtlety. People are talking about how brutal his policies are, and they're right. Those are just Republican policies. And if you disagree, I would like to ask you, what is one policy Donald Trump has that no other Republican would do, that any other Republican wouldn't also do?
No, I agree with you. I think we give him too much credit. So in two ways, like you mentioned earlier, how that you don't believe that this Russia stuff matters because there's no way that he stayed ahead of our intelligence agency. And I completely agree with you. He didn't stay ahead of anyone. All the breadcrumbs are laughably obvious. I mean, he was on television stating obstruction of justice, right? Now, back to your point, yeah, he's an exposed nerve in the Republican vein because he's just a con man and a showman. He will tell you, and he has, that the only reason he has the policies he has is because those got the biggest applause breaks at the rallies. He doesn't actually have an ethos. He doesn't care. He only does what he thinks gets him attention. So we give him credit for being this like 3D chess playing master of trickery and disguise and distraction. He's a bumbling idiot. It's the emperor with no clothes.
Yeah, I agree with all that. But all right, let's move on because yeah, I don't disagree with anything you just said about assessing Trump. kind of bigger picture where they're trying to steer this thing. Red Economics wants to know, what would you do to fix our rigged election system? If the foundation of our democracy is corrupt, then we can't build anything on top of it, Red Economics says. What's your response to that?
The internet levels the playing field. So I have purposefully raised a laughable amount of money up against 4 candidates in this district that will all have over $1 million. We are trying to hold a mirror up to the system to tell everyone you don't have to keep playing their game. Now, luckily here in California, we have an open primary. So as an independent candidate, I can slip onto the ballot a heck of a lot easier than people in other states, right? Because in an open primary, everybody can vote for everybody, regardless of party, and the top 2 people move on. Now, it comes with its own problems, but when you study all the different primary processes, I think it's one of the best. And I can tell you, as an independent candidate on a shoestring budget, I am on the ballot with people far more connected to everything that we're talking to, right? People that are flying back and forth to DC regularly. But we're still on the ballot, and we still have a fighter's chance because of the internet, because of cheap marketing, because of social media.
And I like that. Again, I'm envious of your optimism. I really am. I wish I could share a little bit of it. And I understand where you're coming from. And hey, the one thing that Bernie Sanders did was he really showed us how you can level that playing field a lot. And he showed us that. I mean, especially like as a more progressive person, he showed us that we're not as alone as we thought we were. I thought there weren't a lot of people that thought like me in the country. I thought that I've felt that way my entire life, my entire politically awake life. And then Bernie Sanders just happened to shine a big flashlight at the right time where it's like, nope, no, there's actually a lot of you. You're actually the majority. And everybody's been lying to you. And it's like, oh, great. Well, I can kind of take this home with me. So I see what you're saying, but there are still so many things in place. I mean, especially, and I think that speaks to your decision to run as an independent. I mean, especially if you were to run as a Democrat, you would have already faced multiple hurdles to try to keep you off the ballot. That already would have happened to you.
Yes. There was a large crop of Democrats in this district that threw their name in the hat, and there have been rumors of private investigators, opposition research in the filings. You can see death threats from people on social media because they're terrified of the Democrats splitting the vote to the point where we get 2 Republicans in an open primary. The Republicans don't even show up to debates and town halls. They get invited to everything. They don't want to be seen in public. They have no reason to. They're going to rest on the laurels of this being a red district, and maybe the 2 of them can slip in if the Dems all split each other up. But exactly, to your point, if I had hung a D in front of my name, it would have been a lot easier to get money. The PACs would have just sent it to me. You know what I mean? I've seen the filings. They just divvy it up between all the candidates. Like, I'd have $100 grand right now, and I could do a lot more with it, but we don't need it. And I don't want to owe promises to anybody else. And it would have been disingenuous for me to run as a Democrat right now in this district when 0 Republicans are going to go on that ballot and vote for a D. That is not going to happen anywhere in this country right now. The partisanship is too ripe on that side in particular. So if we can maybe pull over a few Republicans, hopefully get the MPPs, pull in a few Dems, maybe we can sneak through and build a little coalition of minorities, millennials, and union members. And then the white coastal baby boomers can come back to us after the primary because, again, we're out here for Social Security and Medicare. But let me give you one quick example where I think we can actually make some headway on a bipartisan basis, because I understand what you're saying. The machine is great, right? We got to fight it. I didn't used to be this optimistic. I kind of came out the other side of the sausage machine from anger and depression and everything else after 16. But my frustration started back in 2012. I mean, I've been studying this stuff my whole life, and I dropped my Democratic registration in 2012 because I watched the party just completely deface the economic recovery that they had saved. They're just so bad at messaging and so bad at fighting for unions and so bad at fighting for everything that we need that I just was done. But they're trying to come around, so we'll see. One of the things we can do day one on a bipartisan basis that I hope I don't get any pushback on is a debt solution for middle America, because we have $14 trillion in debt in this country that people are paying every month. Those are the real bills you're getting: your mortgage, your car payment, your credit card, your student loan, your healthcare debt. And what I can tell you from a finance perspective is that $14 trillion, while that's what we're all paying, those companies do not expect to receive $14 trillion. We call it paper, and we call it traded paper. And there's second and third markets for your mortgage, your car loan, and all your debt. So they'll buy and sell it for pennies on the dollar, unbeknownst to you. So John Oliver did a great piece on this where he bought $15 million worth of Texas healthcare debt for 60 grand. So he was able to purchase $15 million worth of people's debt that they're paying bills on every month for $60,000. Because when that loan changes hands, they write off the balance, the company that's losing money, right? Same way the president wrote off a $986 million loss one year. Tax advantage, sell it off for pennies on the dollar, and then the new company comes after you for the full amount. Anything they make above the amount they bought it for is gravy. All we want to do is say, when you get that notice in the mail, Ron, your payment doesn't go to this bank, it goes to this bank. Chances are your money changed hands for less. So we want to let the citizen that's dealing with this know how much it changed hands for and give them 90 days to match it. Because I've got over 100 grand in law school debt still. But if I got a notice in the mail that it was changing hands for 30 grand, I'd run to the teacher's credit union, thanks to my wife being a public school teacher, take out a personal loan, get that money back off the table at a lower interest rate, reduce my monthly payment, and only owe a third or less of the balance. I mean, that's happening all over the place. There's no taxes, there's no subsidies, there's no anything. It's literally just giving people access to get their own debt off the table the same way the institutions are.
All right, so we're pretty much out of time. I want to give one more because we have one more super chat contribution here from the Southern Wolves. Thank you very much for your contribution. Solution for the houseless population of Orange County.
Yeah, there's a big homelessness problem out here. 1 in 5 of those homeless are veterans. There's a lot of components in that mix of people, a lot of reasons for their displacement. The housing prices is a big part of it. The county actually has $70.2 million to spend on this. They just can't figure out where to put anything. So they've got to figure that part out. I think long-term, one of the things we can do here in California, again, this is local, I'm running federal, is allow 100% commercially zoned facilities to switch to 100% residency. The state and the municipalities don't like it because they think they get less tax revenue due to Prop 13. They think commercial tax revenue is a better income stream. But all that's happening is people can't afford homes in major markets, so they're commuting around, driving around, and we're losing economy. So if we flipped some of those commercial zoned areas to 100% residential, we could build more affordable housing. Again, with healthcare, if we got single payer, we'd have more money for opioids, for health, mental health, for a lot of things that lead to people ending up on the streets.
All right. Thank you for making that one brief since we are out of time. So use the rest of this time, Kevin. Please give people your website and what they can do to help, when voting day is. Give them the whole 9 yards on what they need to do.
wehavethingstodo.com, because, again, this campaign is not about me. It doesn't matter who I am or what I'm all about. It's for the people, and we have things to do. So we want to put partisanship aside. So wehavethingstodo.com. On Twitter, it's just my name, Kevin_Kensinger, KENSINGER. Facebook, we have things to do, CA48. Instagram, we have things to do. Follow us on social media, share the message, dig into our website. We've devoted ourselves to put more policy and meat on the bones in that website. We got a lot more coming. And throw us a donation if you feel inclined. We're not asking for much, but we are on CrowdPack. You can go to crowdpack.com and find us at CA48 or Kevin Kensinger. And we will do everything we can to fight the system out here.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for joining me today. It was a fun chat with you. I enjoyed it. Guys, this has been Get Your News On with Ron. Thank you once again for your excellent questions for Kevin. You guys knocked it out of the park. You always do. You know the spiel about this show every Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And tomorrow, guys, tomorrow we're going to have a fun time. Who's going to be here? Peter Douche, the Twitter parody himself, is going to be on the show. That guy's Twitter timeline makes me a little jealous. I'm not going to lie, because he is so freaking funny. And I read a lot of his stuff, and I'm like, shit, why didn't I think of that? Well, he's going to be on the show. We're going to have a fun chat. Kevin, thank you guys so much. Guys, you know the spiel here. You want to help out Get Your News On with Ron, patreon.com/Ron Placone. Pay what you can level, and you get all kinds of exclusive content and free show tickets. And Graham Elwood and I are going on tour, and we got a lot more dates to announce very, very soon. Kevin, thank you so much. Best of luck to you. Get Your News On with Ron. I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Peace.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks a lot.